Hey everybody, welcome to Fab Fit Friday. I'm kind of excited. The air is cool and I woke up this morning and I was all energetic to get lots of stuff done. So it's been a great day so far. And I decided what we're going to do today is draft a hip block to lengthen our basic bodices into a torso. So I'm going to be sharing all of that with you. Plus I'm going to show you my draft to start with so you can kind of see where I started with this. And then I'm going to show you how to make the draft. And then after we make the draft, I'm going to show you how to test it by sewing it to your basic bodice that's fitted. So it's kind of important that your your basic bodice is looking good and it's fitted. So I'm happy with mine now, and we'll see how this goes. Hi Rena, welcome. All right, so also I just want to take a minute, and if anybody is watching from Florida, or if you are in Florida, I'm sending out my best wishes for you to be safe and sound. I've been watching the news, and my heart goes out to everybody living in Florida right now. Ugh. So that's been on my mind, and I've been trying to send prayers and good vibrations down there. So I'm thinking of you guys. So I wanted to talk about that for a second. Hi Moira, welcome. All right, so I'm going to get started. I'm going to stand up here and show you what I did. All right, so you can see this white section is my hip block, and to test the fit of it, I sewed it to the bottom of my basic bodice muslin. Now, I am not going to ever make a top like this, and really a torso has one piece. There's no waist seam. This could actually be generated into a peplum. But basically, I am going to show you how to draft this. So that's what we're going to do today. The other thing I want to show you is, move my microphone out of the way. I fitted this side here, so you can see that this fits pretty nicely now. I'm really happy with it. This side needed a little bit taken in, or this is the side that isn't taken in yet, and I just wanted to show you the difference between when I finally fitted it and I got a nice smooth seam over my bust versus here I just had a little extra. So this is what you can be working on or looking for in your princess seam, is if there's a little extra, you can pin it out and sew it in deeper. And that's one of the reasons why working on a princess seam sloper is really sort of easy for fitting, because you can just take it in along that seam where you need to. Let me just stop and say hello. Hi Carol, welcome. Hi Lean, good evening from Belgium. Oh, let me just talk about something not on topic. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, look at this beautiful postcard I got. I ordered these sneakers, and I saw them on Instagram, and then they sent me a $25 coupon if I wanted to try them. So I'm actually wearing them. They're very comfortable. See? I don't know how to show them to you. All right, so see, I love them. And I was watching the FedEx delivery of these sneakers, and they started out in the Netherlands. Then they went to Belgium, so they breezed by you, Lean, and then they went to France. Then they went to Germany. From Germany, they shipped to Tennessee in the United States, and then they arrived in Connecticut, and they came yesterday. They are so comfortable. So my new sneakers, and I just thought this was such a beautiful piece of artwork. So cool. But anyway, so My sneakers that I'm wearing on my feet were right in Belgium with you probably a week ago. So that was my little fun thing. All right, let me just say hi to Kira, Andrea, and Jerry. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Oh, Jerry and Andrea are both in, I think Jerry's from California too, but this morning there, evening in Belgium. This is so fun. All right, so here's what we're going to do today. First, let me show you what my hip block looks like. And actually, before I show you that, if anybody's interested in drafting their own skirt beyond the oops, let me just haul this over here. If anybody's interested in drafting a skirt beyond doing the hip block that we're going to do today, I do have this workbook. It's very step by step. It considers everything, and every step has an illustration to draft a skirt, and then it shows you how to make it into some different styles. I have ease charts for size, waist, dart, hip, waist, ease, and then a dart intake chart to help you decide, you know, the amount of dart intake you may need. And then it's got the step-by-step instructions on how to draft the front and back skirt. And then it goes on past that to show how to make a straight waistband, a contoured waistband. There are some coloring book pages to design different skirt styles. Then I show how to make A-line, flare, really flared. And then I have this fun thing where it's a straight skirt with a flared lower section, how to get rid of darts, more fit and flare design pages. So if anybody's interested in this, I put a link to this workbook in my description below with a coupon code for $5 off. So the PDF of this is normally $15, and if you use the coupon code, it would be $10 or $9.99. So I'm putting that in there just because it's related to what we're doing today. Hi, Diane. Welcome. All right, so let's look at the next thing here. These are my little hip blocks. Aren't they cute? They don't really look like much, but basically this is the top of a skirt. So like I said, if you wanted to use this hip block as a starting point for a skirt, you could do that. What I'm going to show you how to do today is actually plan your hip block so your front and back darts agree with the waist darts on your bodice. So that's how we're going to draft this today. So these are the ones I've already drafted. And I guess, let me just stand up one more time because some of you guys came in a little bit late. Hi, Diane. Welcome. So the pattern pieces I just showed you are sewn onto my basic bodice. Okay, so this is from my waist to my fullest hip. I have a very short distance between my waist and my fullest hip. So if your waist to full hip is 8 inches, if it's 7 inches, whatever the width is between your waist and your full hip, that's how long this will be when you draft it. So, and what we're going to do first is, while I'm standing up, I'm just going to slip my fit elastic on. Oh, Diane says my drafting books are amazing. Thank you, Diane. All right, so I'm just going to put this right around me, and if I lift up my, let me just lift this part up. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to, let me tuck it underneath. You're going to put your bodice on, pretend the white fabric's not there. So just pretend it's not there. You're going to measure from center front to your full hip at center front. You're going to measure full hip, you know, to side, the bottom of your waist to full hip at the side seam, same thing in the back. All right, and if you use your bodice as your guide, because that's what you're going to attach the hip block to, that's what you're going to do. So the first thing is you get your elastic so it's parallel to the floor, okay? And then measure the difference center, front, side, and back. So that's the first thing you need to do. We're going to need those measurements. So I'm just going to put this back down and take this off. If anybody has any questions about taking those measurements, please post them and I will help you. But basically, the hip elastic is going to show you where your full hip is, and we need the center front rise to the full hip, side, and back. All right, so that's what we're going to do. And I'm going to switch my view back over here. Okay, and I have a little piece of paper here. You don't need a giant piece of paper because you just need it to be as long as half of your full hip measurement is. The full hip is what defines the width of your hip block, and then we're going to fit the waist with darts. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw myself a line right over here. And I'm going to use, just so it's big and bold, I'm just going to use a Sharpie marker so you guys can see what I'm doing. So basically, I'm just going to draw myself a line, and I'm using the grid of on my paper to sort of draw a straight on grain kind of line here. Okay. And let's zoom in. We're going to do the front first, so let me just zoom in a little bit so we're closer. I'm going to work with the front. And basically, what we're going to do is I measured my full hip and it was 45 inches. You divide that by 4 and you get 11 and a quarter. So my full hip, 45, so you're going to need that, divided by 4 equals 11 and 1/4 plus ease. And this is where my little ease chart came in handy here. You can decide how much ease you want, and then you can, it does the math for you already. So at my hip, sizes 16 to 20, 2 to 2.5 ease. If you'd like a little more ease, you know, you can do the 22 for 2.5 to 3 inches ease is 3/4 of an inch or 5/8 of an inch. You know, so depending on your size, I have the amount of ease to add for full hip. Now this is for a fitted block. Okay, so it's got some ease. 2 inches of ease is not going to make a super loose hip area. So keep that in mind. I mean, I think I would add the amount of ease that you're using in your bodice so it's all uniform. So when you go to sew it together, then you can grade it out or scale it and add ease to the entire pattern when you're making your actual top pattern later. Let me just stop and say hi to Quilting Texas and Judy. How are you guys? Welcome. Thank you for joining. So I'm going to go with 5/8 of an inch for ease because that's what I did before. So my 11 1/4 plus 5/8 is really 11 7/8, or maybe I'll just go to 12 inches to round it up and make even math. So my quarter full hip measurement is going to be 12 inches, including the ease. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure along this line until I get to 12 inches. And actually I can see already I'm going to need it to be a little bit longer because I'm going to make 2 blocks that are 12 inches wide, one for the front and one for the back. So let me just extend this a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to measure from here to here is 12 inches. Okay, and then we want to create a a 45-degree line from this waistline. So I'm just going to line up my L-shaped ruler and I'm just going to draw a line down like this. Okay, and so now what I've created is, this is going to be my front and back. So basically I've got 12 inches here, And then if I go another 12 inches over here, that's going to give me my other side. So I'm just going to make a note there. And actually I can use my L-shaped ruler to finish my sides here. So I'm just going to line the ruler up and connect my right there. And let me do it over here as well. Okay, like this. Okay, so now I've got my 2 blocks for my front and back. Hi Renee, welcome. Okay, so Renee asked a really good question. She wants to know why I divided the full hip into quarters when the largest portion of the measurement is in our back sides. So actually on a standard draft, the hip is equal front and back. And actually if you were to measure me, my tummy is almost the same size as my butt. So really for me, down at the hip area, it is pretty even. This is a starting point, and you can obviously change it. Like if you know you have a significantly different amount in the back, you can adjust for that. But if you start out even, get it on your body, then you can adjust the side seams to match where they should be on your body, because sometimes it's hard to tell. So we're starting with it being equal at the hip. It's not going to stay equal at the waist though, because the waist is going to change sizes. So let me just show you how we're going to do this. This is going to be, and this is why I said last week, you really have to have your, bodice pieces fitted before you go on to make the hip block, because we're actually going to use the measurement of the waist of our hip. We're using the measurement of the bodice at the waist to get the waist of the hip block. So the first thing I'm going to do here is, this is my front, my side front and my center front pieces for my princess seam pattern that I made last week that I'm wearing now. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to pin them together, and I'll just fold back the seam allowance of one of them like this, and I'm just going to pin it onto the stitching line on the opposite side. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow me to very quickly design my waist and the position of my dart. Because if we're making a hip block, we want the waist dart and the dart in the hip block to make one continuous line. So what I'm going to do here is, we are going to line up, this is the center front piece right here. So see center front, here's my neckline, see right here. We're going to line that up with the center front, what is going to be the center front of my hip block, like this. And notice I marked off the seam allowance there, because I'm not going to put a seam allowance. I'll add the seam allowance later if I decide I want to do that. So I'm lining up my center front stitching line on my bodice, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to mark the position of the dart. So I'm going to go to here. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out how much it needs to go to reach. So if there were no dart, so if the dart were closed, it would reach here. And again, I marked my seam allowance right here. So this is where it would end if there was no dart. So now what we can do is decide how much of this fabric we want to draw into our front to continue the princess seam down. And I think what I'm going to do is make it a, let's say we make it a, I don't know, let's go with, I'm going to go with an inch. Let's go with I'm going to go with an inch and a half. Okay, so that means if I'm going to add an inch and a half dart, this is going to be where my my side seam at my front is going to be. And so this is the position of the dart, so I'm going to measure an inch and a half away. So this is actually going to be the top of my waist dart on my bodice draft. So just to review, I used this measurement without having to measure, because I can just use the paper, right, to walk it along the top of this waistline to see how long it is to here. And then I'm building in the dart. And again, I'm doing an inch and a half here. And then that means I extended it here. So this is going to be my side seam right here. So does anybody have any questions about that? It's sort of a cheater way to do it without measuring. So I've marked the position of my side seam, which is going to be right here. This is going to be nothing now because I only used that as a guide for how big the bottom edge of my bodice was. And that's going to be my side seam, and this is going to be my dart. So now that I know that part, the next thing I'm going to tell you is my full hip at my center front was 5 inches here, and at the side seam it was 5.5 inches. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure down 5 inches to draw my hip, my horizontal balance line for my hip, and I'm going to draw this all the way across. I might as well just do the whole thing like this. So this is going to become my hip. Make sure you guys can see. I'm trying to make it so you can see, but also make it not tiny. I mean, I'm trying to zoom in as much as possible. But basically, this is going to be my hip line, my full hip. And remember, for yourself, it's going to be, this line is going to be from your waist to wherever your full hip is. It could be 4 inches, it could be 5 inches, it could be 8 inches. So however it is at center front, you're going to measure from that down to your full hip, and that's how far this line is going to go. Now at my side seam, it was 5.5 inches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually make a mark that's a 1/2 inch higher, like this. Okay. So when I connect or draw my actual waist in, and let me do that in a different color so it's clear. We'll do orange. So now you can draw in your waist. So I'm going to stay on the line here, and I'm going to draw a slightly curved line up to my waist like this. So this orange line is going to be the front waistline, and you can see it's coming up a 1/2 inch higher at the side seam because I had a longer distance between my waist and my full hip at the side seam. Then what I'm going to do, remember this green line is the end of my hip. So my hip goes from here to here. So again, I'm going to use my curved ruler to connect those like this. And notice I'm not turning my ruler all over the place. I'm trying to keep it parallel, and I'm just sliding it down until the curve agrees with where I need to mark. So it's going to be like this. Okay, so you can see now I have a hip curve. I've got my waist, and then I'm going to draw in my dart. Now this is a big dart for 5 inches. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to find the middle, which is right here. I'm going to draw a line for the middle of my dart like this. And then at the bottom, I am going to just leave a little bit of a generous 1/4 inch at the bottom, so I'm going to sew right through it. And once you have it on, you'll be able to see if this amount of dart works. But you do want to have, I mean, if you look at your you know, my waist dart on my original draft was huge. So it went from here to here in the end, right? So I was sort of picking half that amount for my dart here. Now, the cool thing is I can put a smaller dart here because these are two separate pieces in my princess draft. So basically now I've got, you know, I've got this dart, which we can cut on this line to create a princess, complete princess seam, or we can put it back together and make it a fisheye dart. So we have options here, but basically I'm just using about half of what this honkin' big dart was, because now I'm working with a princess seam. If I were working with the sloper as is here, I would have had to have made the dart this big, and you can see that's ridiculous. So that's why if you've got a large bust, it really helps to translate your bodice into a princess seam, because then, because they're two separate pieces, you can really make these any size because they're separate. All right, so I'm going to see if I can then put this back together and make it one in a minute, or it might have to be a separate princess seam torso. So basically, I just wanted to kind of explain, if you're landlocked into a waist dart, the top of the dart and the hip curve needs to be the same, but you would never see a waist dart with a center that's 4 inches. All right, so that's why for me, I went to a princess seam, and I'm choosing a more realistic dart, about half of what this is down here. All right, so that's what I decided to do there. And you can see now this is basically complete. Let's do the back dart, and I'm going to do it the exact same way. I'm going to start at my center front, and for this one, this is landlocked, so this dart has to be this length. So this would be sort of what I was talking about in the front. So if I start at my center front, and again I'm removing the side, the seam allowance there, so this is kind of easy. I can just mark, here's my dart, it has to be the same because it's all landlocked, right? And then I'm gonna just pivot this to here. This is where this ends, right there. And again, I'm getting rid of the side seam for now. So to finish the back block, basically I'm going to have to lift up my side seam the same 1/2 inch. So if I continue this and just make my little, 1/2 inch here, from here to here, and then my center back was actually a 1/4 inch shorter than my center front. So at the center back, I'm going to measure down a 1/4 inch. Okay, so my center back is actually lower than my center front. Let me fold them up together so you can see. You'll see, back is a 1/4 inch lower than my center front. Okay, so now to draw this shape in, here's my orange. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is, let me just fold it in half. So for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect my that lower 1/4 inch with the side seam here, like this. Okay, so see how it's lower and then it goes up to here. And then again, my hip curve is going to do this. Now, I want to talk about the shape of my front and back hip curve here. Depending on how defined your waist is, this could be curvier or straighter. Remember, your full hip line can be farther down. So your hip block might not look like mine. I'm basically a rectangle, so the fact that I have any curve at all is pretty amazing because all of my measurements are very similar. So here is the shape. Now I'm just going to find the center of my dart here, which is going to be about right here. I'm going to draw the center of that in. And then again, I'm going to draw my dart the same, and I'm going to take out some extra at the bottom so it's not, because it's so short. So here I'm leaving about I'm taking out about a 1/2 inch here. Hi Cheryl, welcome. So now we've got a front and back hip block, and here's the cool thing about this. I'm going to show you how to make it a princess seam torso, meaning you'll have a center front opening and you'll have a center front and side front, center back, side front torso sloper. But if you want to test it and make sure it fits, you can cut it out on the fold and just sew it together like I did here. So see, I tested it. You're going to make sure your darts match up, your side seam matches up, and the darts in the back match up as well. So that's why I tested it like it was just one piece, almost like a peplum. So basically now, what I'm going to do here is, I need to add seam allowances because I took them off of my ends. And I think what I'm going to do is, let's just add seam allowances. I'll use a different color. I'll use this darker pink. So I'm going to add a 1/2 inch along my center front. I'm going to add a 1/2 inch along my top edge so I can sew it together. Okay, and then, all right, so actually now I have to cut it apart because, let me just cut this here. I'm just going to cut it in half. I'm not going to add any to the bottom edge. I'm just going to leave that. Okay. All right, and then let me just add seam allowance to my front as well. And then I'll add it. I'll add it, my center front, let me just add it there too. Okay. All right, so now I've got my 2 separate drafts here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use a piece of scrap to add my side seams. I'm just going to tape a little bit of paper here so I can add my 1/2 inch to my side seam. Okay. All right, so here is my front, and here is my back. Let me just add a side seam over here very quickly. All right, so Moira says, so basically the princess seam allows you to vary the amount of ease more or less along the whole length of the garment. Well, what it's doing is it's allowing you to make a, to make whatever amount of dart you want to create here in the middle of the front and not use the exact front draft. Now, this is only an issue if you've got a big bust. So if you've got an A, B, or C cup, your dart is not gonna swing way out like mine did. So you can see how big my dart is here. Okay, so I didn't want to deal with that, extending it down into a torso. You know, I didn't want to deal with that big dart. So by cutting it into two pieces, it's not landlocked. So once this is sewn together, as long as the top measurement of my front matches when it's sewn together, it's not going to know that you have two different size darts because the tops were not landlocked. In the back, I had to use the same dart to draft it because it was all one piece. But again, if we're going to cut it into a real princess seam, the back would be separate too. So right now my pattern only has a princess seam in the front, it does not have a princess seam in the back, but I can show you how to draft that or change the back into a princess seam as well. All right, so let me just do this here and then I'll show you what we're going to do next. These are just, this is a really, like if you are new to pattern drafting or you've never drafted something before, this is just a fun, drafting a skirt is a fun, easy thing to do. And I think anybody can try this without having a lot of drafting experience. So like if you are following along in my bodice drafting and it's been a little bit intimidating, maybe you feel like it's just a lot. If you try with the skirt first, you might see how much fun it is, and then you'll be more adventurous to try the bodice because the skirt is actually very simple and straightforward, and there are far fewer measurements that you have to deal with. So, and then of course, if you did do your draft for your bodice and it fits, then you don't need to measure and figure out how you're going to fit the waist because you can just use the information from the bottom of your bodice to create the shaping at the top of the hip block. So, all right, so let's look at this here. So these are my pieces, and again, this is what I sewed. I cut one of these on the fold. So at my center front, I had a fold, and I had a fold on my center back, and I sewed it in together, and I sewed my darts just to make sure it fit. So that was my test. Now that I know they fit, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my, let's work with the front first. So you can see what we can do here. And actually, let me mark my, I'm going to mark the bottom ½ inch seam allowance that I have here. And actually, I think what I'll do is I'll just cut that off because we don't need a seam allowance on both. So I'm going to cut that off. And I'm also going to cut off the bottom ½ inch on my center front piece as well. Okay, so I got rid of the seam allowances at the bottom of my princess seam front. Okay, and so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to cut this dart. So like if I cut this dart leg, okay, then you can see where this is going to match. This is my center front. So I can line this up like this. Okay, and then where I cut, I'm going to have to add a seam allowance back in. So there is my extension Make this bigger so you can see the whole thing here. Oops. Okay, so see what I did was I added that little hip shape to the bottom, and then I just need to add a little bit of seam allowance here to make it obviously match the seam allowance on the princess seam. Okay, so if I just mark my 1/2 inch right here, it's going to go like this, so I can just cut that off. Alright, so there is my completed center front hip block now. Okay, so what I did was I just used that portion of my hip block to extend the center front. And then I can do the same thing to the, here's my, so I'm going to extend this here, and I'm not going to cut this off because that way I won't have to tape more paper on to add the seam allowance. So I'm just going to line this up like this, right along the seam allowance. And you can see what we have now is you can see on my side front, you can see I've got the waist shaping right here because I'm attaching the top of the hip block to the side front. If you want to put a little paper in there, and like if it comes to a sharp point right here, you can just go in and like make that a little bit smoother like this. Like you can fill it in a little bit so it's not so dramatic. So you don't ever want to have like a really pointy curve there. So see how I just smoothed that out? And then I can add my 1/2 inch to the edge of my hip curve like this, and then it will match. And I almost have enough all the way down. So you can see even at the center front, the bodice curves back out a little bit, so you can see the shape. All right, so that would be the torso length side front piece. And if I put them right next to each other, so I got that there. Let me just move all this little bits of paper out of the way. And then here's my front piece. And then let me just move myself out of the way over here. There. All right, so you can see now, there's my, hey Saremy, welcome. Saremy used a very cool binder attachment to make, I think she was making some sort of bag. I had to leave before she finished, but it was a very cool attachment she was working with yesterday. So you can watch her live on Thursdays and me live on, on Fridays. Yes, we're extending to a torso here, and you can see when I put these together, like if I touch I'm just going to touch my stitching lines here. Well, I can't touch them both, but you can see the dart is in here, and it's not gigantic like this dart right here. You see, this is what I didn't want, is this gigantic dart that I had in my basic bodice to be showing up over here. So you can see that that's, I think, more reasonable, the dart that's in there at the waist. Okay, so that's the front. Oh, I got a little bit of curve. I mean, this curve is pretty hubba hubba. This is probably like rectangle, but That's why I'm saying everybody's shape is going to look a little bit different than mine. So don't feel like if you're following along with me and your bodice looks completely different than mine, that's okay, because we all have different shapes. Oh, Snug Bums has a question. I'm new to sewing and I have having audio issues with your bodice fitting sessions. Will the book you mentioned be easy to follow? All right, so the Bodice Draft Along companion has all the steps in it, and there's a link for that below this video as well. The Skirt Draft is a completely different book, which also has everything is step by step in my instructions, and I do an illustration for every step, so it's pretty easy to follow. And I apologize about the audio. I've got my Rode mic right in front of my face now, and I'm trying to be as loud as I can. Oh no, you lost your audio? Is it because I touched my thing? Can you guys hear me? I don't understand why I'm having audio problems. It's a little bit frustrating because I have all pro equipment and I'm really kind of annoyed. So please let me know if you can hear me again, or if anybody can't hear me, please let me know. It's showing up as my audio on my OBS is showing that it's live and working, so I don't know what's happening. So I apologize. Oh, Saremy says the audio is fine. All right, so Snug Bums, I'm so sorry. I hope you can hear me. All right, so that's our front. Now the back, like I said, this is a princess seam in the front. I did not draft my back into a princess seam. So I could, by slashing into my shoulder to the tip of my dart and make it two separate pieces, and you would basically do that the exact same way I showed how to do the front, except you're not dealing with a bust dart, so there's no need to ease in the center, the side front into the, I mean, let me show you here. So because you've got the bust start, this little bit of extra right here is what we ended up with when I closed the bust start. So that amount of ease is gathered here. So it fits into this section here. Okay, it's just slightly longer. In the back, you're not going to have that problem. You're going to be, let me see, is my, you're going to be, oops, let me move this out of the way. So if you wanted to create a princess seam in the back, I mean, it's really just a matter of connecting from the middle of your shoulder to the tip of your dart and then transferring some of this dart up here, and then you will have a center back and a side back. But again, you won't have to ease in the edges because there's no bust dart to create that little bit of extra on the side piece. So I think I'm gonna just leave it this way though, because let's say this is your front bodice. Now I know it's the back, but you may have a more reasonable waist start like this. My waist start is a very reasonable size in the back. Let me just draw it in darker here. I'm going to move it down a little bit too. So here's the dart in the back. Okay, so if we wanted to take our hip curve that we drafted for the back, we could add it to our, we can add it to the bottom of this. I'm just going to cut the seam allowance off here. And it might have a little bit of a curve, so let's see what happens here. But basically, I can add this by attaching it like this. Okay, so see how if I just tape this together. Oh yay, Kira just went over and subscribed to your channel, Saremy. Yay. I feel like we have to spread the love among us YouTubers. Okay, so let me just show you here. So I'm lining that up. And here's the interesting thing. Remember when I told you we had to measure the rise from our waist edge to our full hip at the side seam, and it was longer? Notice how that curve here that's higher, because we did the 1/2 inch higher at the side seam, lines right up with the bottom edge of our sloper. If we had drawn a straight line across, notice it would not match up. So that makes me very happy that that happened. So that goes to show you that if you measure properly, take your time, you can see now that that's lining up perfectly. And in the back, you can see I really don't have any waist curve. So this is going to be something I'm going to have to fit onto my body and see if I need to create some shaping here or not. But you can see as far as the draft goes, it matches perfectly. And now my waist dart is a fisheye dart. So see if I continue it down. And I can draw my, I can go all the way up here to straight down here. So see, now I've got a back that's a torso shape. And the cool thing is, like I said, if you wanted to create a princess seam from here, you could literally cut this dart out and then cut along here and add seam allowances. I don't even think you need to, I think you could probably just cut that off and just make it 2 separate pieces. I don't know that you even need to transfer any of the dart at this point. But basically, you could have a side back and a center back. But one thing I want to point out to you is, and I see this all the time when I'm looking at people drafting their own patterns, you never want to have a point. So see how this is very pointy here? You don't want that point. You want it to be more of a smooth curve. So just curve it out so you don't have any sharp points here. Kira says, our shapes are very similar. I always describe my figure as a box. I know it really is, and honestly, I have like boy legs, like my waist, my tummy, my butt, my full hips are all within 2 inches of each other. So I find that very comical, and the fact that I have no shaping here is because if you look at this, there is shaping here. It's just I pulled it all out to the center. So like if I make this dart, it's going to cinch that in fabric. So so that is kind of funny, but that is kind of my shape right there. So this is how you would add your torso block if you were working with a waist bust dart situation, or just a waist dart situation, or a waist dart shoulder dart situation. And again, like I said, if you have a smaller cup size, your waist dart is going to be more reasonable, and you can extend that into a torso like this, where you don't have this gigantic dart that I had in mine. And Saremy says, we're not sharp and pointy here. No, we're definitely not sharp and pointy. Oh my gosh. So anyway, so that is the way to create a torso from your basic bodice draft. So I've got my back and I've got my front. Of course, one thing you should always do is, after you create your front and back, it's always a good idea to match up your side seams and make sure they're going to sew together here. And you can see I have some different shapes going on, so I'm going to have to see how that sews together and see if I want to change that a little bit, because I've got a pretty drastic, if I turn them like this, you can see I've got a pretty drastic shape difference here. So maybe what I can do is at my waist, I can say to myself, all right, I want to give myself a little bit of a hip curve here. Oh, I'm sorry, over here on my side seam, sorry. And so I could actually bring this out like this, and then bring this out, you know, I can bring it out like this. So I'm creating that more of a shape. Okay, and then if I take it off here, I've got to take it off over here. So I'll take off a quarter and I'll just remove from this dart, make it smaller. Because see, I'm taking off over here, so I'm taking half that amount off the actual dart, if that makes sense. So I've made my dart smaller, and I've made a hip curve. So now if I cut this off, like that, and now if I compare that to my side seam, you can see that's a little bit more agreeable. Kira says, I have broad shoulders too. It's amazing, but I do look feminine. Yes, athletic and feminine. I call I'm like a linebacker, but you know, it's okay. And here's the thing. We're sewing clothes to fit us so we look nice. So that's why we sew clothes, because when I go to shop for things in the store, and actually I can't remember the last time I shopped for anything in a store, but when I used to, by the time I got a top to fit me through my bust, it was huge in the shoulders, you know, and my sleeves were never long enough. So I've always had issues with either both my pants and my tops. So the fact that I can make broad shoulders, make room for my bust, take it in where I don't need it, I mean, that's why we sew our own clothes. So anyway, you can see here by reducing the dart, so now this is, so the dart is now here, okay, instead of the pink line. Okay, so basically what I did was I took out some of the dart, so this is now nothing. You know, these pink lines are nothing. But basically I can get rid of it on the side to create more of a curve that will then agree a little bit nicer. So when I lay these, you know, see that kind of agrees, right? And then that's going to kind of agree. But also I can see here my seams are not matching, so I'm going to have to figure that out too. My front side seam is about a ½ inch longer than my back side seam. So I will shorten it here. And I think I'm just going to bring it to my original front though, because I need the length at my center front or it'll dip up. But you always want to check and make sure your side seams match. Make sure everything that sews together matches. You know, you should go and make sure your shoulder matches, because now that we cut this into 2 pieces, I can put them back together on the stitching line and just make sure. So if I pin them together at the stitching line, okay, we can then make sure that the shoulders are the same length, okay, which those are, so I'm happy with that. Maybe there's like a little funny thing going on here. Let me just cut that off. But basically, my shoulders match. Okay, so you can have a princess seam in the front and a waist dart in the back, or you can create the princess seam in the back as well. But this is our basic sloper. This is super exciting. So I think my October is absolutely crazy. Oh, Moira says you agree the shoulder fit is the key. Yes, it is. I mean, if things fit, then they look nice. All right, so just so you know, next Friday I might have to go with my dad to the doctor, and I don't know what time the appointment is yet. So if I will post in the community tab if I cannot come. What is the problem with you? What? My daughter is freaking out. What is it? Oh, okay. Sorry. So if I'm not here next Friday, it's because I'm with my dad at the doctor, and I will update you as soon as I know that. Um, I'm leaving Sunday to go teach at the volunteer sewist program at the University of Kentucky. I'm super excited about that because it's going to be a fun time. I'm going to meet all these wonderful new people, and I'm going to teach 3 classes that I love to teach. So I'm almost viewing it as a sewing vacation. So I'm super excited about that. I'll be back Thursday. If I don't have to take my dad to the doctor at 1 o'clock, I will be here. And then I don't know if there's any space left, but I am teaching the top-down, center-out pants fitting method with stitches next weekend. There are 4 2-hour classes. It's going to be a really in-depth, how to do all the steps correctly class. So if anybody would like to join me for that, you can head over there and see if there's any space left in that class. Then I'm jetting off to Jacksonville the week after to teach jean fitting. And then the week after that, I'm going to be at Sew Jersey in New Jersey doing yoga pants and t-shirts. So if anybody is in the tri-state area and they'd like to join me for a live event at Sew Jersey in East Hanover, New Jersey, please, I will put the link below that and you can join me for that too. That's going to be super fun. I love Sew Jersey. It's such an amazing store. My friend Eric works there. It's going to be a really good time. So that's my schedule. So October is going to be a very busy schedule, and I will be missing a few Fab Fit Fridays because I will be traveling. All right, let me see. Let me just say, Kira says, I used to do alterations for a very elderly woman who was extremely flat-chested. She always said she was at the age where she needed to get a tattoo to read in case of emergencies, this side up. Oh, that's kind of sweet. I don't know. Oh, Snug Bums is back. Yay. I hope you can hear me. Polly says, have the opposite problem, very narrow shoulders yet ample chest. Learned to make my own clothes at age 13 because of it. Yep, that's another thing that can happen. By the time you get something to fit you in the bust, it could be falling off your shoulder. So I'm glad that you've worked that out for yourself, Polly. That's excellent. Oh, Kara's asking where is the 2-hour class? I am teaching it next weekend for Stitches events, and I don't know if there's a link to it below this video. I can go back and put it. If you want to know all about me, scan this QR code. This is my link tree, which has everything that I do all the time. So if you scan that QR code, I think it will bring you to my link tree, and then you can find the registration information there. And if you can't come in October, I'm also going to be teaching it the same format. I'm self-hosting it on November 12th and 13th. So it's going to be the same 4 classes, 2 hours per class, and I will put a link to that class below this video as well if you'd like to join me for that. I will tell you that the top-down, center-out method has revolutionized my fitting process, and I feel like it's made me 500% better in terms of pants fitting because it really helps you balance the front and back leg so you can see what fine-tune adjustments you may need without all of the slicing and dicing and back and forth between adjusting all the different areas. Oh, so Saremy scanned my QR code and it worked. All right, so that's good. I was wondering if it was going to work because I was showing it to you through a screen, but I think I'm not mirror image, so I think that works out okay. So you can always go to my link tree. You can sign up for my newsletter there. You can see which classes I'm teaching. That's a good way to keep track of me. But anyway, so those are my reports for now. I will get off and I will put links to those top-down, center-out pants fitting classes. I really think it'll be the last pants class you'll ever have to take because I'm really amazed at the results I'm getting, and I have spent time fitting private pants fitting students, so I know it works, and I've been able to work with women who have different shapes and sizes. Moira says, as ever, thank you so much for sharing your expertise. Hope your dad is okay. Enjoy teach-ins, 7 p.m. here, so my weekend just begun. Have a great weekend. You have a great weekend too, Moira. Thank you for joining us. Oh, so Saremy just used the camera on her phone to scan the QR code and it worked. So thank you for letting me know that, Saremy. Okay, so Snugbums had a question, and you can hear me. So ask me your question again, because I can't remember when I'm live sometimes. I can scroll back and look. Hold on. Oh, you asked if my book is easy to follow. I think that's the question. Let me just see here. All right, so let me just show you an example of my fitting book. Both the companion to the pattern drafting series, I mean the bodice draft, and also the skirt draft, it would be very similar. So if I just show you here, you can see all of my instructions have, every major step will have illustrations. So I'm very detailed in my workbooks are very detailed. So this is the skirt draft, and there is a coupon code there for $5 off this. And then the basic bodice draft is very similar. So you can see everything is laid out. There are steps, pictures for every step. So that's, I hope that answers your question, Snugbums. And Kara says, good, I am currently waiting to see if I can pass a kidney stone till next week and maybe have surgery, so later class will be better. Thank you so much. I love you all. I love all you do. Oh, thank you so much. And I will send you, you know, prayers and good vibrations that works out for you the best it can. I know that's painful, so I'm sending you good vibrations and prayers for a speedy conclusion to that. All right, so I think I'm good. I hope you guys are good. I will put links to the top down center out pants fitting classes as soon as I get off, or if you scan the QR code, you can get it there. So thank you guys for joining me, and I hope I see you guys next week. I think my dad is going to be fine. I just want to go with him because he's not very good at, you know, telling us what happened at these appointments. So I want to hear for myself what's going on. But anyway, thank you guys so much for following along with me. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I will be posting behind the scenes from the University of Kentucky on my Instagram and in my J Stern Designs Fit Sew Embroider group. So I will be keeping in touch with you while I'm traveling. And I hope to see you next week. Oh, also, let me show you a picture. This is a first preview. You're the first ones to see it. I had this other fun project where I made my daughter a cushion for her sewing nook. So let me just show you what that looks like. Let me see here. So it looks like this. Whoops. Oh, actually, let me show you the picture that she sent me from her classroom. Hold on. All right, so here is the cushion I made, and you can see it says, I love reading. So I embroidered 8-inch letters on denim machine applique. So on Tuesday this week for Fit Tip Tuesday, I'm going to show you how to embroider with big letters. So I know that's not an actual fitting technique, but I'm showing how to work with real size templates to get good results when you're working with big applique letters. And the cool thing about this is it does take some time, but it's a lot quicker than if I were solid embroidering those big 8-inch letters. Each letter would take over an hour to stitch out if that was solid embroidery. But if you're doing machine applique, it goes by much quicker. So that's what I will be sharing with you guys on Tuesday when I'm in Kentucky. I've already shot it and it's ready to go. So there will be Fit Tip Tuesday. Oh, Saremy says, oh, Kara says thank you. Oh, Diane, thanks. Thank you, Diane, for coming. Kara, thank you. Saremy says, turned out great. Those letters are much bigger than I realized. Oh, Kara says, I taught 20 years. That's so adorable. Well, my daughter's a brand new third grade teacher. She just graduated in December, and I went to help her set up her room. And she made this really cute sewing nook, and she had that little, it's really a cube shelf that she put on the ground for the kids to sit on. So I made that little cover for her, and actually I quilted it. I put a piece of cotton batting under it and grid quilted it just to make sure those letters stayed on with those little third grade butts getting up and down on it. But anyway, you know, to make it a little more durable. But anyway, so that's what I'm sharing with you guys on Tuesday when I'm gone. And again, I hope to see you Friday. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Let me just see here. So Fun said, thank you so much for such a helpful information and love embroidery help too. Well, yay. I'm so excited. All right. You guys have made my day. Thank you for joining me. I have to get off now because my daughter is still grinning like a Cheshire cat, so I have to find out what her issue is. Oh, it's good. It's a good issue. I gotta go. You guys have a lovely weekend. I will see you again very soon. Bye.